Obsession, Chapter 1, Scene 1, The Mysterious Man. I'm in Ndebele girl born and bred in Bulawayo. I completed my studies at Mpopoma High School and then proceeded to university. I was lucky to get a stable job just after graduating. However, I had been so unfortunate in relationships. You'd swear all the witches and wizards in Zimbabwe have had a meeting about me and bewitched my love life just to make sure nothing goes right for me. Bad luck, nightmares, and unclear visions I constantly had made me find someone to be emotionally there for me. I found at Munkambo, a traditional flea market in town. People called her Mandlovu. I called her Ntombi Endala, old girl, and she called me Ntombi Emhlope, light in complexion girl. She was friendly, and I loved the way she explains things to me, quoting scriptures from the Bible. Her explanations were very incredible. I remember her saying, Makoti, bad luck is a series of misfortunes. It is caused by generational curses or witchcraft or disobedience. They can be conquered by prayer and fasting as well as respecting the elderly. Respecting the elderly include following the superstitions and staying away from what is considered a taboo. Never in your life underestimate the power of respect. She taught me a few things about the herbs in a market. You seem to know the Bible very well. How come you sell herbs? I had to ask her. There is nothing wrong with herbs as long as they don't kill. They are plants that were created by God for our use. In case you don't know, almost all prescribed medications have a herbal content, she responded. Out of curiosity, I asked her who are her customers, and she responded, both sex, every age group, all tribes and races. Her statement made me laugh. I bought a few herbs just to support a small business. My last relationship ended a few days after visiting Mandlovu. It ended badly because Lucky impregnated my best friend. Though I was hurt, it didn't take the better of me because I had predicted the problem a few days before it actually happened. Though I didn't know whether the conflict was going to lead to the death of the relationship. I had to put dating on hold up and had since distanced myself from ladies. Lang, vuga, Mama said, shaking me. 2 minutes. I responded, turning to face the other side away from her. Lang, vuga sizopuza esontweni. Oh my goodness, she is Western and alarm. I looked at the watch that was hanging on the wall. It was only 7 o'clock and I was feeling sleepy. Why do you look so waked up? Mama asked. Well, I had a terrible dream. In that dreadful dream, a huge lion was chasing me. He chased me over a very long distance and he seemed to never give up. How did your dream end? I don't know really. I think it just ended like that. You need to pray hard. That is all, she said and left my room. I spread my bed and then walked to the bathroom. I brushed my teeth and took a quick shower. I applied camphor on my body and then wore a knee-length yellow flare dress and nude block heels. I applied light makeup on my face and a nude lipstick on my full lips. I combed my long black hair and tied it into a messy bun. I put on white studs and a silver wristwatch. I looked at myself in the mirror once more. I admit I looked perfect. I'm not blowing my own horn, but my body was a body to die for. Every woman's dream body. That's how I hooked every man right in my finger. I sprayed my wrist and neck with my favorite cologne. I grabbed my phone, put it in the nude clutch bag and left the room heading to the kitchen. I fixed breakfast and set the table for 2. We never cleaned the house on Sundays. Mama always stressed that it was the day of the Lord and we had to keep it holy. She joined me shortly. She was wearing a neatly ironed grey and purple uniform and rocking black Tommy shoes. She placed her basket on top of the dining table. It was full of hymn books, from Shona, Venda, Sutu to Ndebele. We had our breakfast and left the house. We walked all the way from Popoma location to Njube Lutheran Center where our chapel was located. I remained behind by the gate dusting my feet and heels while Mama proceeded to the chapel. When I was done, I walked into the yard, picking attractive steps. A few steps into the yard, I saw a giant light-skinned man coming from the car park. The first thing I checked was his wrist. A man is defined by the watch he wears. Oh my goodness, a Rolex. I could smell money 50 kilometers away. I tied them multiple times. He oozed the power in his navy blue slim-fit suit. I laughed his fashion sense. He raised his head and our eyes met and locked. He had big amber eyes just like me. What a coincidence. His aquiline nose was perfectly aligned. I got butterflies in my stomach as I stared at him in admiration. Heavenly Father, is it even allowed for a guy to be this gorgeous? He should be the most handsome guy in the land of the most handsome. Believe you me, he was extremely handsome. I'm sure half of the ladies who knew him were dying for his affection, eager to mash him down the aisle at the drop of a hat. He looked exactly like my next mistake. As I was admiring his looks, I accidentally stepped on a stone and fell. Before I knew it, I was already in his muscular arms. His colony filled my nose, sending chills in my spine. "Put me down, I can walk," I said, trying to jump off his muscular arms, but he held me tightly against his massive chest. "I don't remember asking you if you can walk." Oops, he's rude, but his voice is beautiful. I thought he was taking me to the chapel, but he headed to the car park instead. He opened the passenger's door of a Mercedes-Benz C63 and helped me sit with my legs hanging outside the car. He quickly took a first aid box behind the driver's seat. Who walks around with that? Is he a medical doctor? He started attending to my wound and I just watched him. Gosh, I was smitten. I glanced at his ring finger. I needed to know if he was cuffed. "Are you always this careless?" He broke the silence. I didn't look where I stepped. I blushed as I looked into his amber eyes. Who is this mysterious guy? His voice was amazing. I could just let him talk all day while I grinned. "I hope your girlfriend or wife won't pull my skin." "Don't worry about those. I have no crazy girlfriend, baby mama, or wife." "Liar, a grown man like you can't be single. Maybe God has been saving me for someone." "Really? Who is the lucky girl?" "You will know in due time." "What's the beautiful name for a beautiful lady?" "Langa," I said, looking into his soul through his eyes. To succeed, jump as quickly to opportunities as you do to conclusions. "Andrew, it's a pleasure to meet you, Langa," he said, extending his hand to me. "Thank you for dressing my wound. It's nice to meet you too, Andrew," I said, putting my hand in his. He kissed it and then helped me up. I love his gestures. "You look good in that suit. Tell me something I don't know," he said, smiling mischievously. "Don't be such a brag, mister," I said, walking away. Finally, I could breathe on my own. I could feel his eyes pacing down my skin, and that gave me courage to catwalk. I walked into the chapel. The sound of my heels hitting on the wooden tiles drew the church's attention. Everyone turned and watched me as I walked down the passage. Mind you, I was not dressed up like I was going to church, but as if I was going to a red carpet ceremony. I was about to lose confidence when Liberty waved at me, indicating where he was seated. I walked quickly towards the bench on which he was sitting. I paved my way through the bench in front and knees of people until I reached him and sat down. "As usual," he whispered into my ear. "What?" I whispered back. "You are late. Since when have you been my timekeeper?" "How I wish I was one. I was going to punish you until you learn to respect the church." "Don't act like you're the saint here. We both know that you only come to church when there is liturgy." He rolled his eyes. "What happened to your knee?" he asked, poking it. "Ouch! Stop it, it hurts." "You were playing soccer again. What kind of a lady are you?" "No, it's a long story." "Cut it short. Focus exactly, but let's pay attention to the Bible study." He sat up straight, facing the front with his arms folded in defeat. Mrs. Impala was already wrapping up with questions to measure the church's understanding. Catherine, one of the youth, led the litany while Pastor Sivume preached. He preached so well, making the whole church sob as usual. When he had wrapped up with a prayer, he climbed down the pulpit and joined the church in singing a hymn song, while offering baskets were rotated around the church, collecting the offerings. The merchant code for equal cash and the account number for the bank transfers were displayed next to the board where hymn songs to be sung during the service were displayed. When the basket had reached all the four corners of the chapel, Mrs. Msipa took them and presented them to the pastor, who was already in the altar waiting for them. He blessed the offerings. I teased Liberty as we stood up singing the liturgy hymn. "Here comes your favorite session." He squeezed my bandaged knee hard and I almost screamed. I punched him hard on his chest and he closed his eyes in pain. Lucky enough, the church was busy singing and didn't notice all that, except for a few people who were standing next to us. I have never tasted the body and blood of Jesus because I hadn't been baptized yet. I missed baptism twice at high school due to sports trips. "I bet that was too little for your liking." I teased him as he sat down licking his lips, probably hoping for alcohol to ooze from them. "Leave me alone, latecomer." "All right, litage," I said, shielding my bandaged knee in case he decided to strike. Lucky enough, he ignored me. I looked around the church. Trust me, the way people look after receiving the Holy Communion, you would bet the hell is empty. When the service was over, Catherine put off the candle lights. Mrs. Impala then stood in front of the church, indicating that we should stop the chorus. When the singing had turned into a dead silence, she called the treasurer to make an announcement. Mrs. Msipa then rushed to the front and quickly gave us broken down figures of the amount of money that was collected that day. Today we managed to put together 74 bond 50 cents, $43, 92 RTGS Eco Cash, and 25 RTGS bank transfer. We also collected 4 candles and a box of matches. Thank you, she said, and then walked back to her seat while the church clapped hands in a beautiful pattern. Mrs. Impala then called upon the youth advisor to make an announcement. I started the chorus pokingly but so he could back me up, and he obeyed, and the whole church vibrated in melody. Mama walked confidently to the front, and I assured her with a smile as she stood in front, facing the church, ready to deliver the announcement. That's how much we supported each other. She was my first best friend before the gorilla that was sitting next to me. With them, a smile never escaped my face. "Lichonile bandla," she said, and then paused as the church responded enthusiastically. "Youth, are you there?" she asked in a raised voice. "Yes, ma'am," we shouted back as we waved our hands. "Well, I'm here to remind you about your revival that will be hosted by Manama next week, but one on Friday." She spoke calmly. "Our buses will ferry you there. Go in numbers to revive each other. Do not miss out," she said, and then walked back to her seat while we clapped our hands. The last to announce for the day was none other than our beloved Pastor Sivume. We stood up singing and dancing while he walked to the front. When everyone had taken their seats, he spoke. "Church, I regret to inform you that I'm leaving the country for Sweden in 2 days. I'm going to meet the Sweden presiding bishop, the deans, and other pastors. The meeting was on short notice. I'll be away for 2 months, and I'm happy to leave you in the hands of a junior pastor who just graduated from Chekato Bible School." He paused and then said, "Mr. Andrew, please come up front and introduce yourself to the church." I was astonished at the mention of his name. No way, he's just too young to be a pastor. "My pastor," I sighed in disappointment as I listened to his deep manly voice. How are you, Njube congregation? My name is Andrew Senyoka. I'm going to give you rules that will help us to live in harmony while Pastor Sivume is away. My rules are simple and straightforward. He spoke so fast with great authority and confidence. Rule number 1, no late coming to the services. If you by any chance find yourself outside that door by 9:30, don't bother to come in. I looked at him in disbelief. For someone that handsome, he was just too much. Rule number 2, church services are compulsory. If you miss a service, you'll be thoroughly punished. I'm sure there are many church projects that need to be finished by the end of this year, but there is not enough money for labor. If you think I'm joking, you'll find yourselves in work suits. Rule number 3, the use of cell phones is strictly prohibited. I turned to Lippert and whispered in his ear, "Not in this day and era. Speaking of phones, we have our Bibles and hymns installed in them. We also use them during offering times to make equivocation and CP transfers." "Which planet is he from?" "He's an ancient that is resistant to change," he whispered back. Rule number 4, I will not tolerate whispering as I consider it disrespect. If I spot you whispering like those two, he said, pointing at us, and everyone in front of us turned to look at us. I was so embarrassed. "I will not hesitate to throw you outside the church and mark you absent." "Thank you," he said, and started walking back to his seat. The church was in dead silence. Only his shoes were heard, hitting hard on the tiles, reporting his massive weight. He sucked all the vibe we had. We sang weakly as we greeted each other before he dispersed.